Your Mazda dealer smiled when you drove off that lot, not because you were satisfied, but because of what they never told you. There are 15 mistakes that can quietly destroy your engine, void your warranty, and turn a reliable car into a money pit before 80,000 miles. That harmless startup habit, damaging your engine daily, that button you always press? Engineers warned against it, and that sound you ignore? One technician called it the beginning of the end. What we are going to discuss will make you furious at every dealer you've ever visited. Let's get into it. Number 15. Never start your Mazda without checking this first. Before your key ever touches the ignition, before your foot ever touches the brake, there is one thing Mazda engineers built into every single model that most owners completely ignore, and ignoring it doesn't just cause inconvenience, it causes damage that accumulates invisibly over months until the repair bill arrives and nobody can explain why. Your Mazda has a cold start enrichment cycle. Every modern fuel-injected engine does. In the first 30 seconds after a cold start, the engine management system runs a rich fuel mixture, meaning more fuel than normal, to compensate for cold metal surfaces that don't vaporize fuel as efficiently as warm ones. During this window, the engine is running outside its normal operating parameters by design. What Mazda specifically engineers against is adding electrical load during this exact window. Heated seats, rear defrost, blower fan on maximum, all of it switched on simultaneously the moment the engine fires. That electrical load forces the alternator to work at maximum output precisely when the engine is at its most vulnerable, fighting cold, oil viscosity, and rich fuel mixture simultaneously. A Mazda technician in Nagoya documented 31 cases in a single year, where premature alternator failure was traced back to consistent maximum electrical load during cold start cycles. Average repair cost, $640. Average owner response when told the cause, complete disbelief. Turn one thing on at a time after starting. Let the engine settle for 30 seconds before loading the electrical system. 30 seconds. That's the entire protocol, but the alternator is only one victim of bad startup habits. The next one attacks something far more expensive, and the damage happens so slowly that most owners never connect the cause to the repair bill. Number 14. Never rev a cold Mazda engine. This one has been debated in online forums for years by people who clearly have never read Mazda's own engineering documentation. The debate ends here. Cold engine oil is thick, not slightly thicker, dramatically thicker. At 0 degrees Fahrenheit, the viscosity of standard 5W30 motor oil is roughly 11 times higher than at normal operating temperature. That thick oil does not flow freely through the narrow oil passages inside a Mazda engine. It moves slowly under pressure, building up to full lubrication coverage over the first 60 to 90 seconds of idle. During that window, every moving metal surface inside your engine is operating with reduced lubrication, bearing surfaces, camshaft lobes, cylinder walls, all of them relying on the thin residual oil film left over from the last shutdown, while full pressure lubrication catches up. Revving a cold Mazda engine during this window, even a single sharp throttle blip to 4,000 revolutions per minute forces those under-lubricated surfaces to move at high speed against each other. The microscopic metal-to-metal contact that results doesn't cause immediate failure. It causes wear, compounding wear. Every cold rev adds a layer of damage that doesn't show up until 60,000 miles later when compression drops, oil consumption rises, and a mechanic tells you the engine is worn beyond what the mileage should justify. Mazda's own owner documentation for Skyactiv engines specifically states that aggressive acceleration should be avoided until coolant temperature reaches normal operating range. That's not a suggestion buried in fine print. That's an engineering requirement that your dealer never once mentioned during handover. Let the temperature gauge begin moving before you ask anything from the engine. That gauge moving is your confirmation that oil viscosity has dropped enough for safe operation. But here's the thing, revving isn't the only way to destroy a cold engine. The next habit is something every Mazda owner with a remote start does every single morning. Completely convinced they're doing the right thing, they're not. If what you are learning so far is already making you reconcile your morning routine, hit that subscribe button right now, because from number 13 down, the damage gets more expensive, more permanent, and more infuriating. Number 13. Never let your Mazda idle to warm up. Remote start may feel like the perfect winter convenience, but using it the wrong way can quietly damage your Mazda's Skyactiv engine over time. Modern fuel-injected engines are designed to warm up under light driving load, not by idling for long periods. Extended cold. Idling causes incomplete fuel combustion, allowing unburned fuel to slip past the piston rings and dilute the engine oil. That weakened oil loses viscosity and protection, increasing wear inside the engine. Skyactiv engines are especially sensitive because of their high compression design and tight tolerances. Instead of letting the car idle for 10 minutes, Mazda's safer warm-up approach is starting the engine, waiting briefly for oil circulation, then driving gently at low RPM until everything reaches operating temperature. but gentle driving means nothing if you're making the next mistake before you even leave the driveway. And this one is hiding in a habit so automatic that most drivers don't even realize they're doing it. Number 12, never ignore the oil pressure. Warning at startup. Your Mazda has an oil pressure warning light, red, shaped like an old oil can. It illuminates every time you turn the ignition on as part of the instrument cluster's self-check, and it extinguishes within 2 seconds of the engine starting as oil pressure builds. Most drivers know this. What most drivers don't know is that the behavior of that light in the first 2 seconds after startup tells you something critical about your engine's condition. A healthy Mazda engine at normal oil level and correct viscosity extinguishes the oil pressure light within 1 to 2 seconds of starting. As engines accumulate mileage and oil passages develop minor deposits, that light takes slightly longer to extinguish. At the point where the light takes 3 to 4 seconds to go out after startup, oil pressure is building more slowly than engineered. The bearings and surfaces are going longer without lubrication at each start. If you have ever started your Mazda and seen that light stay on for 4 or more seconds before going out, you have a developing lubrication issue, not an emergency, a warning, one that allows intervention before catastrophic failure if acted on promptly. Most owners never notice because they start the car and immediately look away. The instrument cluster self-check happens. Everything goes dark. They assume everything is normal. Start watching that light every morning. Time it mentally. 2 seconds is healthy. 3 seconds is investigation time. 4 seconds is urgent. If it ever stays on beyond 5 seconds after the engine fires, shut the engine off immediately. Running a low-pressure engine causes bearing damage measurable in seconds. But oil pressure is only one warning your Mazda sends at startup that almost nobody reads correctly. The next one comes through your ears, not your eyes. And most people hear it and do nothing because they don't know what it means. Number 11, never ignore this sound at startup. There is a sound that some Mazda engines make at cold start that owners describe in various ways. A brief rattle, a ticking that fades within seconds, a metallic chatter that disappears as the engine warms. Most people hear it and dismiss it because it goes away quickly. That dismissal is expensive. That brief startup rattle is the sound of hydraulic valve lifters operating without full oil pressure. In the seconds between engine fire and full oil pressure build up, the hydraulic lifters, which maintain valve clearance using oil pressure, are operating partially collapsed. They tick and rattle until pressure arrives and fills them. Occasional light ticking on a very cold start and freezing temperatures is within normal parameters for many engines. Consistent rattling on every start, regardless of temperature, is not. It indicates that oil is draining back from the lifters during shutdown, which means either the oil viscosity is wrong for the climate, the oil level is low, or the anti-drainback valve in the oil filter is failing. An anti-drainback valve failure on a Mazda is a $12 oil filter problem that, left unaddressed, creates a $30 per startup lubrication deficit that compounds into a $3,000 engine repair over 18 months. $12 versus $3,000. The difference is knowing what that sound means. Note when the rattle occurs. Note how long it lasts. Note whether it's getting longer over successive cold starts. That pattern tells you everything about which of the 3 causes is responsible, and each cause has a specific cheap fix if caught early. But sounds aren't the only startup signal your Mazda sends that most owners misread. There's one that comes through the brake pedal itself, and almost everyone who feels it assumes everything is fine when exactly the opposite is true. Number 10, never start without doing this brake check. Every Mazda owner presses the brake pedal before starting the car. It's automatic. It's required to release the shift lock on automatic transmission models. Nobody thinks twice about it. But that automatic press is also the most reliable diagnostic check you have for one of your car's most critical safety systems, and nobody is using it. When you press the brake pedal before startup with the engine off, you are pressing against the stored vacuum in the brake booster. That vacuum was captured from the last time the engine ran. A healthy brake booster holds vacuum effectively between starts. The pedal feels firm but responsive. Here is the check. Press the pedal slowly and hold medium pressure before starting. Note the pedal position. Start the engine. The moment the engine fires and vacuum generation resumes, a healthy booster will cause the pedal to drop slightly and then firm up. That slight drop is the booster equalizing with the vacuum supply. It's a pass. The booster is working. If the pedal drops significantly and feels spongy after startup, the booster is leaking vacuum. If the pedal shows no change at all and feels like pressing against a wall, even after the engine starts, the booster has failed to hold or generate vacuum. A failing brake booster doesn't cause immediate brake failure. It causes reduced braking assistance, meaning you need to press harder for the same stopping power. In a panic stop, that difference in required pedal force is the difference between stopping in time and not stopping in time. The check takes 3 seconds. You're already pressing the pedal. You're just not paying attention to what it's telling you. But your brakes aren't the only safety system that sends a startup signal most owners ignore. power. The next one is visible, obvious, and sitting directly in front of your face every single morning. Number 9. Never start without reading. This dashboard signal, your Mazda's instrument cluster runs a self-check every time you turn the ignition to the on position before starting. Every warning light illuminates for approximately 2 seconds, then extinguishes. The engine starts. Everyone looks away. That 2-second window is the single most information-dense moment in your entire ownership of that vehicle, and virtually every driver treats it as something to wait through rather than something to read. Here's the specific check that matters. Turn the ignition to the on position. Before pressing the brake, before pressing start, watch the instrument cluster. Every light should illuminate. Count the critical ones: oil pressure, battery, engine management, TPMS, ABS, brake system warning. They should all come on together and go out together within 2 seconds of engine start. Any light that fails to illuminate during the self-check has a burned out bulb in the warning circuit. That light will also fail to warn you when the actual fault condition occurs. A TPMS warning light with a burned out bulb will not illuminate when your tire pressure drops dangerously low. A battery warning light that doesn't work won't tell you when your alternator fails. Any light that illuminates and stays on after the engine fires is reporting an active fault. Any light that illuminates after the self-check and then goes out is reporting an intermittent fault that your diagnostic system logged and is now clearing. Mazda's diagnostic system logs fault codes even when warning lights clear themselves. A pattern of intermittent warnings that clear on their own is frequently the early signature of a sensor or system in the process of failing. Catching that pattern at the self-check stage gives you weeks of lead time before the actual failure. 2 seconds of attention every morning. That's the entire investment. But what your dashboard can't tell you is the damage being caused before the engine even fires. The next mistake happens in the exact moment between pressing start and the engine catching, and it's one of the most expensive habits a Mazda owner can have. Number 8. Never crank the engine more than this. If your Mazda struggles to start and you keep cranking repeatedly, you may be making the problem worse. Extended cranking can point to fuel pressure issues, weak spark, low compression, or flooded cylinders, and non-stop attempts strain the starter motor, battery, and fuel system. On direct injection engines, excessive cranking can even dilute engine oil with fuel. The safer approach is short 5-second attempts with pauses in between. If the engine still won't start after a few tries, the problem needs diagnosis, not more cranking. Ignoring repeated hard starts can turn a small repair into an expensive failure. But how you crank isn't the only startup error that costs money quietly. The next one involves a feature Mazda added to make your life easier that most owners are using in a way that does the exact opposite. Number 7. Never use iStop. This way, Mazda's iStop system is the automatic engine stop-start technology that shuts the engine off at traffic lights and restarts it when you release the brake. It is one of the most sophisticated stop-start systems in the automotive industry. Mazda engineers designed it to restart using direct fuel injection into the cylinder rather than the starter motor, making it faster and gentler than conventional stop-start systems. It is also one of the most misused features on any Mazda, and the misuse pattern is so consistent that Mazda technicians across multiple markets have independently identified it as a leading cause of premature battery failure and iStop system faults. The misuse is this: owners disable iStop every single drive by pressing the iStop off button immediately after starting the car, then wonder why their iStop battery requires replacement every 18 months instead of every 4 to 5 years. The iStop system uses a specialist absorbent glass mat battery that is specifically engineered to handle the charge and discharge cycles of repeated engine stop-start operation. When iStop is consistently disabled, the battery does not complete its design to charge cycles. The battery management system, calibrated for iStop operation, misreads the battery's state of charge. The battery degrades faster than its design life because it is never used in the way its chemistry requires. A Mazda iStop battery costs between $250 and $400 to replace. Owners who use iStop normally replace it every 4 to 5 years. Owners who consistently disable iStop replace it every 18 months to 2 years, and they do it without ever understanding why their battery keeps failing early. The iStop system is not optional equipment to be switched off for comfort. It is an integrated part of the vehicle's electrical management architecture, treated as one, but the battery isn't the only component that iStop misuse damages quietly. The next mistake involves something physically connected to that same system, and the failure it causes is one that Mazda dealers classify as a wear item to avoid covering it under warranty. Number 6. Never ignore your Mazda's belt at startup. Your Mazda's accessory belt system experiences its highest stress during the first seconds after a cold start. Cold temperatures make belts stiffer, tensioners less precise, and pulleys tighter, creating the squeal many owners hear briefly in the morning. An occasional short squeal in very cold weather is usually normal, but repeated or longer squeals can signal a weakening tensioner, worn belt, or failing pulley bearing. Ignoring these sounds can lead to costly failures, including belts slipping at highway speed and causing serious engine damage. Early inspection and replacement are far cheaper than waiting for a complete breakdown, but your belt system isn't even the most overlooked mechanical mechanical check at cold start. The next one involves a fluid your Mazda consumes silently, and by the time you notice it's gone, the damage is already done. Number 5. Never start a Mazda with low coolant. Coolant level is a check that most Mazda owners perform approximately never, relying on the temperature warning light to tell them if something is wrong. The temperature warning light does not tell you if something is wrong with your coolant level. It tells you that your engine has already overheated. That is not early warning. That is final warning. Mazda's Skyactiv engines run a higher operating temperature than most comparable engines by design. Higher operating temperature improves thermodynamic efficiency and is part of the architecture that achieves Skyactiv's fuel economy figures. It also means that a cooling system operating at reduced capacity reaches the critical failure threshold faster than a lower temperature engine would. A Mazda running 500 milliliters low on coolant, an amount invisible to casual inspection because the reservoir still shows fluid, has a cooling system with reduced thermal capacity and a small but real increase in average operating temperature. On a normal commute, this is undetectable. On a hot day in slow traffic, towing, or climbing a long grade, that reduced capacity is the margin between normal operation and thermal runaway. Thermal runaway on a Skyactiv engine, specifically due to its high compression architecture, produces head gasket failure before the temperature gauge reaches the red zone in many documented cases. The coolant boils locally around the combustion chamber before the bulk coolant temperature triggers the sensor. Head gasket replacement on a Mazda Skyactiv engine costs between $1,200 and $2,000 depending on the model. Coolant costs $12 and takes 45 seconds to check. Check the coolant reservoir every second fuel fill. It takes less time than cleaning your windshield, but low coolant is only dangerous after the engine is already running. The next mistake causes damage in the exact moment the engine starts, before coolant temperature even begins to rise. Number 4. Never do this with your steering. Kadira at cold start. Mazda power steering systems have a cold start, weakness most owners are never warned about. In hydraulic systems, cold steering fluid moves slowly and turning the wheel to full lock immediately after startup forces thick fluid through the system under extreme pressure. Over time, these repeated pressure spikes fatigue steering rack seals, causing leaks and premature rack failure far earlier than the intended lifespan. Many drivers unknowingly damage their steering every morning just by reversing and turning too quickly after startup. Waiting 60 seconds before using a full steering lock can prevent repairs costing hundreds or even thousands. But steering isn't the only system being damaged by impatient cold start habits. The next mistake hits the most expensive single component in your Mazda's drivetrain, and the damage it causes doesn't show up until the warranty has expired. Number 3. Never select drive. Immediately after startup, your Mazda's automatic transmission, whether it is a conventional torquey converter unit, Mazda's Skyactiv drive, or the manual mode equipped variants, shares one critical requirement at cold start that the owner's manual mentions briefly and dealers never explain at all. Transmission fluid, like engine oil, is significantly more viscous when cold. The hydraulic circuits inside an automatic transmission that control clutch pack engagement, gear selection, and torque converter lockup all rely on fluid at the correct viscosity to respond at the correct speed. Cold fluid moves through these circuits more slowly than the transmission's control system expects. When you start a cold Mazda and immediately select drive and apply throttle, the transmission engages its first clutch pack with fluid that is too thick to fill the circuit at the normal rate. The result is a brief moment of clutch slip where the clutch engages partially before full hydraulic pressure develops. That slip generates heat and friction on the clutch pack surface. One instance of cold engagement slip causes no measurable damage it is designed for. 2,000 instances of cold engagement slip over 4 years of daily driving, causes clutch pack wear that presents as transmission, shutter on light throttle acceleration, typically appearing between 35,000 and 50,000 miles, precisely when most Mazda warranties have expired. Mazda transmission repair or replacement costs between $2,500 and $5,000. The prevention is 7 seconds. Start the engine, wait 7 seconds for transmission fluid to begin circulating through the warm-up cycle, then select drive. The transmission's own temperature management does the rest. 7 seconds of patience against a $5,000 repair. The engineers knew about this. The dealer never mentioned it, and the next mistake is the one they most specifically never mentioned, because understanding it would change the way you think about every service interval they've ever sold you. Number 2. Never use the wrong oil at startup. Mazda's oil specifications for Skyactiv engines are engineering requirements, not suggestions. Using the wrong oil viscosity, even if it was cheaper or recommended by another shop, slows lubrication during cold starts when engine wear is highest. Thicker oil takes longer to reach critical parts, extending friction and microscopic damage every single morning. Over time, those extra seconds of poor lubrication create permanent wear. No oil change can reverse. Using the correct oil grade protects your engine during the moments it is most vulnerable. Mazda's approved oil list exists in the owner's manual. It takes 30 seconds to read. It takes 30 seconds to show to the service technician before any oil change. But even correct oil can't protect you from the single most damaging startup habit that Mazda owners have. The one that number 1 exposes completely. daily. And once you understand it, the way you think about everything your dealer has ever told you will change permanently. Number 1. Never trust the dealer. Service interval for startup protection. Mazda's standard oil service intervals are based on ideal driving conditions, not the reality most owners face. Frequent cold starts, short trips, stop-start traffic, and extended idling accelerate oil breakdown far faster than dealers admit. Tests on used oil from Skyactiv engines showed many vehicles running 10,000 miles. Intervals had oil already degraded by 9,000 miles. That means thousands of miles with weakened engine protection. Shorter oil change intervals may cost slightly more over time, but the long-term cost of engine wear, oil consumption, and premature failures is far greater. Your driving habits, not the dealer's schedule, determine how long your Mazda lasts. If even one of these 15 habits is something you've been doing every morning without knowing the damage it causes, drop a comment below telling me which number hit hardest. There's another video on your screen right now that dives into every other Mazda secret that dealers specifically avoid telling you. Click it before you forget and I will meet you there. Drive safe and keep it efficient.